Hello, everyone, and welcome to EduMatch. Follow along with us on Google Plus as you're watching right now. tinyurl.com/EduMatch tweet and talk 60, as well as on our Twitter hashtag EduMatch. Speaking of EduMatch, if you want to be the featured person of the day, then check out our website at edumatch.org, and you can sign up there to join our network of over 19,000 educators. It's crazy. Like in 2 years, we have built up our network so that it now has almost 20,000 people in it, and that is insane. And that is all thanks to you all. So thank you for doing everything that you all have. Our 2-year anniversary is tomorrow, so I am celebrating with some non-alcoholic apple cider right here. So happy 2 years, EduMatch. Cheers to you. And we have a great episode going on tonight. So this is awesome. And we are currently live. So tonight we're going to be talking about podcasting. We have some of my good friends on here to talk about their experiences with podcasting. So we're just going to go ahead and introduce ourselves. So I'll start first with the panelists, and then I'll bring it back to our moderator, then I'll turn it over to you. So if we could start first with Dr. Will.
Okay. Hello, everyone. How are you doing? All right. My name is Dr. Will, instructional technologist with Hattiesburg Public School System. And I know there are a few students in our district that are using podcasts for a variety of projects, and I have been a host of a podcast show for the past 2 years.
All right, fantastic. And we'll go next to Greg. Okay, Greg might be frozen, so we will come back to Greg. But if we could go next to Rolland.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Rolland, doing great. How are you? Great to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So my name is Rolland Chidiac, and I'm an educator in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. And I just started my own podcast in August, where I interview people and talk about their motivation and their inspiration. And I'm thinking that in the next few weeks, I'm going to start podcasting with my students. So that's where I'm at right now.
Sweet, that's fantastic, fantastic. All right, let's go next to Greg.
Greetings. I'm Greg Bagby, administrator in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I work with a couple of folks that I met on Twitter, and we do the Edu Road Trip podcast, which is a podcast which we virtually go on a road trip, meeting different educators around the U.S. and other sites, and talking about how those sites that we come up with, how they can be derived into education. It's not necessarily, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, so to speak, because we meet at the Statue of Liberty and talk to someone about the way they teach government, or we meet at a toy store and we talk about how they use play in the classroom. So we've developed that into the Edu Road Trip, and we've had fun, and I'm excited about being here this evening.
Great, great. And we are excited to have all of you on panel, so thank you very much. And now we're going to pass it over officially to our awesome moderator, Rachelle Wooten. So if you could please introduce yourself, and then I'm going to hand it right on over to you.
Awesome. Well, my name is Rachelle Wooten, and I've been kind of in love with podcasting for a while, but I think I've dipped in and out as new things have continued to come up and kind of expanded that. I did have the privilege of putting together an iBook called Mission Possible, A Teacher's Guide to Podcasting. We'll be glad to share that with you on Twitter. And so I'm looking forward to sharing. Like Rolland, I've kind of picked it back up as part of my graduate coursework, giving me almost a portfolio of things to kind of share what I'm learning. And so, yeah, I picked that back up in August. And so I'm excited about that, already doing some cool things. But I'm looking forward to learning with tonight's panelists, too. I think it's going to be exciting.
Awesome. We are so happy to have you here, all of you. So, Rachelle, I'm going to turn it right back on over to you to go ahead and drop your first question.
All right, here we go. So when you hear the word podcasting, what comes to mind? And let's start with you, Rolland.
Sure. So when I hear the word podcasting, I think of radio. I think of an audio show. At first, my understanding was very narrow, but over time, I've been able to broaden my perspective because I've been experiencing a lot of different types of podcasts. So that's initially what I've thought of podcasting when I hear it.
Thanks, Rolland. How about you, Greg? Because I love the idea of the Edu road trip. I'd love to hear what you think about.
Well, kind of crazy. When I first think of podcasting, it's something that, well, we were doing something similar to this a long time ago, and I just thought it was internet radio. And this was when I was in the school about 13 years ago. And then, of course, in 2003 when I got my iPod, and we started doing things with the iPod. I guess it was the same time, and they had the podcasts. I just assumed that they were like talk shows, and that's what immediately comes to mind: the talk show or something, not necessarily radio or music driven, but just folks talking about different topics or different issues. Somebody allowing their voice to be heard through this medium on the internet.
Dr. Will, can you share what comes to mind for you?
I guess like everyone said, it's like a, radio show. People, sharing expertise, interviewing people, providing information or entertainment to individuals over the internet through various platforms. Did everyone hear me? Okay.
All right, fantastic answers. Those are fantastic answers. So I'm going to turn it back over to Rachelle for the next question.
My mic muted. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
I was talking and I was like, oh my gosh, I've been muted this whole time. But anyway, so when it comes to podcasting, what 21st century skills do you think that students develop, or even teachers, when they create and produce podcasts?
I think
anybody want to tackle that one first? There we go.
Sure. I think the teachers and students, they need to, one of the things that we talk about in school is authenticity and actually having a true audience. When you're creating podcasts, there is an audience that you have to think about. There is an audience that you're seeking. There's an audience that you're going for. So just the skill of knowing your audience and knowing what to do for them in order to get them to come back to your podcast. That's one of the skills, because students have to write a bunch of times from kindergarten through 12th grade and beyond. But there's an authentic, true audience when there's a podcast, and they have to know that audience, and they're going to have to figure out what's best for that audience, how to speak to their audience, and what things will get the audience to return. So I think the skill of just knowing your audience and relaying a message to that specific audience is something that they build.
I agree with Greg. I think it's what he said is very important. I also think it's important to really take the time to sculpt your message in terms of communication, what you're going to say and preparing to say it. So that's a huge skill. I mean, obviously you're communicating in an oral fashion. So from my perspective, you need to be prepared, and you need to probably spend time practicing what you might say and how you might say it. A huge skill that I think is necessary.
Yes, and I would say people mentioned earlier communication, but we're also talking about collaboration, creativity, students who have to write out the scripts, edit it, and all of these sort of tech skills that are much needed and increasingly needed, no matter where you are and where you work. So kids getting these sort of hands-on experiences to be able to, again, take those to wherever they go after they graduate from high school.
Awesome. Those are great, y'all. Really, really good. I mean, I don't think I could add anything to that. I just agree with all of those. I'm a big authentic audience type of person, and so I agree with what Greg and Rolland were sharing there. And then, of course, Dr. Will, when you brought in the communication, collaboration, and creativity, it just really wraps it all up. I mean, we are covering quite a bit of those 4 C's, probably at least half of them, with podcasting. So this is something, since you all kind of have your experience podcasting, what are some of the technology tools that you're using to create or produce these, you or your students?
Well, I guess I'll go first. And so basically, when I started podcasting, I was using this really cool online application called Blab, and it was audio and video. So I needed my webcam, my mic, my headset, and I was doing it on my desktop because I wanted to, my desktop's a powerful machine, so I wanted to make sure that I had a machine that could handle everything I was doing. And also I made sure that I was hardwired and not using Wi-Fi, because I really wanted to make sure that on my end, things were running as smoothly as possible with respect to the internet. Since then, though, Blab's gone away, so then I went to Google Hangouts on Air, and same thing. I need my camera, I need my headset, my mic, but now I've moved into something called Zencastr, and it's a podcasting website. It's all audio. I just tried it the other day, and it's fantastic. It does all kinds of really neat things after the fact. So it records the audio. It has like a chat option inside of the web browser. And the only thing that my guests require is a microphone and a browser. So as long as they have those 2 things, I can connect with them via their Android or iPhone or their laptop, Chromebook, whatever. I can connect. So I've been using that, and I've been really enjoying it. But I think for me, the key thing at this moment, being a newbie, is to be hardwired to the internet, alleviate any issues on my end with respect to connectivity.
That's cool. I hadn't heard of Zencastr. Rolland, thank you for sharing that. I just tweeted that out. That's what took me a little moment to pause. I had to share that with some folks who may have been new to that. And I'll make sure I mention you again in that. I didn't have your handle at first. Anybody else have some really cool tools that you're using to create podcasts?
Well, not necessarily cool tools. I was actually taking notes on the Zencastr because I've not heard that one either. But of course, I have a big blue microphone, which I love, just because sometimes I can be an audio geek. And yes, I should have my earbuds in just a small, and that would work, but no. Before, I used to use, what did we use? Actually, we used to use iMovie back in the day. We would do everything in iMovie and then strip the audio and upload audio files only. And that was, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago when we started this in school, because the kids were really familiar with iMovie and they could do iMovie, and it was just an easy tool for them, and they could just click a button to extract the audio, and they could edit it in iMovie. So they would edit it, extract the audio, and then we'd have an audio file that could be used. Now I use the Google on Air or Hangouts on Air. Been using that for the last couple of years with what we've been doing as a podcast, but most recently I saw a tool that actually I was about to send an email to the company asking them more about it. The Focusrite iTrack. It's I saw it in a friend's school. It's the iTrack dock, and what it is you slide your iPad inside of this dock, and it has a couple of microphones that comes out. It has some audio inputs and outputs, and you open up GarageBand, and then you have a little studio where you can fade in or fade out. You have the controls right there on the dock. And I saw a principal just south of me in Georgia, using this for iPad production of podcasts with the students. So I'm actually going to, like I said, I was pulling it up today just to see, because he sent me a link to it, and I'll share that link with you as well. And I was pulling it up today to see if I can get one of these just to see how it works with podcasting. And it looks kind of cool, and it looks like you can do a whole lot more than podcasting, especially if you like to create live music and share it. So there you go.
Well, I started out, using Google Hangouts on air. I've done a couple of shows via Blog Talk Radio, but then you can use SoundCloud, which is awesome. I actually use SoundCloud to host the audio versions of my podcast. I'm going to be launching, my show been on hiatus, and we're going to relaunch on Zoom. Because I'm not a fan of YouTube Live, so it was time for me to move on. Blog Talk Radio would have been awesome, but I was limited because the people who would call in my show, if it was going to be an audio show, could only be from the United States. And I wanted to be able to, if I found someone awesome somewhere else and they were agreed to be on the show, I would want to be able to go, hey, let's do this, and not have those constraints. So I'll be moving over to Zoom in a couple of weeks.
It's so interested in everybody's conversations, and I end up like, oh, unmute my mic. So I'm coming back. But Sarah, do I need to do we need to wrap it up with a final question? I know it's about 5:19. What would you prefer?
Yeah. No, go ahead, and the final question would be great.
Alrighty. So how about we take this one? What are some of you all's favorite podcasts to listen to or view? Especially for education.
It's a great question. I'll jump in again if that's okay with everybody.
Sure.
I'm really enjoying a podcast called Check This Out. It's by Brian Briggs and Ryan O'Donnell. And they are two educators out in California. I met Brian Briggs at the Google Teacher Academy a couple of years ago. And Brian's been a big inspiration for me to get me onto podcasting. So I do listen to Check It Out quite often. It's a cool podcast where Ryan and Brian talk about cool things that we should check out on the internet, tools and things of that nature. And then I've lately been listening to a podcast. It's not, well, that's my education one. There's a couple of other ones that I listen to just for fun, Canadian type stuff, but that's my big education one.
Well, one of the ones that I love for education, of course my own, no, just kidding, but Jennifer Gonzalez, she does Cult of Pedagogy, and I really like some of the tools and tips that she offers on that one. And I've told her this, it's not just when you go to her website or her blog, it's not just that she has a place there to hold her podcast, but I say it's an actual educational experience when you go in there and see the things that she has available. And most recently, a friend of mine who introduced me to one called Pass the Mic, but that's not for school. It's more about other stuff that I do in my life.
I know this might sound shameful, but I don't listen to a lot of education podcasts. I like listening to business podcasts, podcasts about leadership, and I definitely like in the morning. I like to get pumped. I got to get excited. I like to get ready to go out and kill it on the job. So I like to listen to Kelly Roach, and because she talks about business and branding and going out there and making things happen. And so that's sort of my mindset of not just doing my job, but being the best in the game. So that's what I sort of like listening to. So if you can recommend some ed podcasts, it'd be cool. And it's crazy because I have a show where I interview educators, and I would hope people listen to my show. But but I don't listen, really listen. I like to listen to business and leadership.
Oh, awesome. And hopefully everybody out there, of course, is in some way a subscriber to EduMatch, and you're checking that out almost on a weekly basis or catching the archives. And on that note, I'm going to pass it back over to Sarah, our EduMatch leader here.
Well, thank you so much, Rachelle, and thank you so much to Dr. Will, to Greg, and to Rolland, as well as to everyone who is tweeting with us, everyone who is watching us, and everyone who will watch us. So definitely join our family. Check us out, edumatch.org. Almost 2 years in, 2 years as of tomorrow, still growing. Watch out for the EduMatch book dropping at the end of the year. Hopefully, fingers crossed, if all goes well, if all continues to go smoothly, then we will have our very first EduMatch book coming your way in December. And so far, so good. So hopefully that momentum continues. All right. So definitely wanted to thank everyone once again. The show will be available as an iTunes podcast in the coming weeks. In addition, the transcript will be put out almost immediately on Twitter. So the Twitter transcript, I should say. So come back next week. We're going to be talking about tech integration, debating tech integration. Should it be enough to integrate it in our classrooms? How do we move to that model? Or is it better to keep technology integration as a separate class? So the great debate will continue. If you're interested in that, then just tweet to @edu_match. So it's going to be at a different time next week. So 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So hopefully you all can catch it at noon if you're on the East Coast, and 11 Central, 10 Mountain, and 9 Pacific, and so on and so on and so on. So definitely looking forward to that. So thank you again to everyone, and have a great one. Bye.